and welcome to the CottageCutz YouTube channel. My name is Linh, or LV Handcrafted here on YouTube, and today I am going to make two cards because this style of background, it actually generates a nice 2-for-1. So I actually have two sheets of pattern paper here that I've cut down to 4¼ by, actually this measures 4 inches by 5¼ and these will be landscape panels, and I am actually going to make some diagonal cuts that create a bit of a starburst pattern. This is actually from a card sketch that I learned like a couple months back now. I don't have the specific card sketch in front of me, so I'm basically just winging it and deciding where to actually make my cuts in such a way that it feels visually pleasing to me. And you can always make a template if you want, just to cut it out and actually see how it looks without actually having to cut into your pattern paper. That way, when you go to make your cuts on your pattern paper, you know already it's going to be something that you like. But basically what I end up doing is putting, there's a lot of me making pencil tick marks along the top edge and along that left hand edge, because all of my cuts are going to start at the bottom right corner of this panel, and that's going to be the center of where this starburst is going to radiate from. So I'm going to line up, when I make my cuts, that bottom right corner to each of these pencil marks that I'm making along the left-hand edge and along that top edge. And I thought I would try to save myself some time by cutting both sheets of pattern paper at the same time. It does, if you do this, run the risk of, especially towards the end, and this happened to me, where the pieces that remain on the left that I could actually use to hold down started getting smaller, and so the pattern paper started to slip, and so my cut got a little bit off towards the end. I think the last two cuts were the pattern papers started to slip a little bit. So definitely, if you want something a little bit more precise, just depends on the card layout that you are designing. If you need everything to be really, really flush, what I would do is decide on what your pattern is and then transfer the very same tick marks, pencil marks, to your second sheet of pattern paper and cut them separately. But as you can see, all I'm doing is lining up that bottom right corner with the tick mark, starting, going across the top and then down that left edge. And then I have all of my pieces cut from the two different pattern papers, and I will alternate the two patterns. That way you get that starburst effect. And as I mentioned, this is going to be a USA2 size card, and I'm fresh out of card bases, so you can get 2 card bases from 1 sheet of US letter. So what I like to do is just score at 4¼ turn it along the 11-inch edge, and then cut at 5½ inches. And then for my solid color matte layer, I'm cutting this at 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And as I mentioned, the pattern papers were originally cut to 4 inches by 5 1/4. So very, very thin margins all the way around. But mainly, I just want this pattern to kind of shine. And so here you can see I'm just alternating these triangle pieces so that it alternates between the stripes and the polka dots. And what I love is that one of the patterns is a little bit more solid. That polka dot is actually a white polka dot on top of green. So it feels a little bit more solid than the stripes, which feels a little bit lighter. So you kind of have that contrast, not just between the two patterns, polka dot versus stripes, but also you have a little bit of contrast in terms of light versus dark. And it helps that these are all or both from the same paper pad, so the colors match perfectly with each other. And the way that I like to get all of these individual triangle wedges onto my card base is to actually connect all of them together with each other so that I can actually manipulate this as if it's one single panel. And I find that a lot easier than gluing each of these triangles down separately onto my card base, because for me, if you don't get that first triangle wedge down and spaced perfectly, as you attach subsequent triangles, it's going to get progressively off. And then it's possible by the time you can really see it, that first triangle piece is glued and stuck down really well, especially if you're using something like a liquid adhesive, which is what I tend to use. Whereas here, if I'm a little bit off, I can do exactly what I've done here. This is just low tack tape, so I can just peel it up, line it up as best I can, taking my time to do that, however long it takes, however many tries it takes. And I can then just manipulate this as if it was a single panel. And of course, I am going to complete 2 cards because we do have that nice 2-for-1 background design. And so I'll be making 2 Mother's Day cards. And now is a good time to mention that if you caught my last video here on this channel and you left a comment, check the description box below to see if you won the die set that CottageCutz was giving away from that video. And CottageCutz is generously going to give away a die set from to one of the lucky folks who leaves a comment on this video. So if you want to be in for a chance to win the Love You Mom die set, which I will use again on this card because I will be making 2 Mother's Day cards, and you'll see it on screen in a moment here. But if you want to be in for a chance to win the Love You Mom phrase die set, then leave a comment on this video, and on my next video I'll announce the winner of that die. The giveaway is only for US addresses, so please keep that in mind. If you are international and you still want to leave a comment on this video, I still encourage you to do that because I do love knowing, hearing from you, getting your feedback, and reading all of your comments. But if you could just make a note that you are international, that way when CottageCutz chooses a winner, they'll know. So the other die sets that I'm using today are the Holiday Mason Jar, which is a previous release, and the most recent release, I've picked out some of the flowers from the Flowers and More release. And I did prepare quite a few different flowers. You see 3 of them there, plus I also have the lemon plant. But I actually don't end up using everything that I prepared because once I got that first flower and that one branch in, I started to really like the look of a very simple flower or floral arrangement. And so even though my intention was to use the greenery from the lemon plant as just additional foliage to kind of fill out my arrangement, I end up not using that, and you'll see me try quite a few times to to add that to the arrangement, and I ultimately never do. The branch is from the Holiday Mason jar, which has more winter florals, and I realized that the jar actually has a slit through the top of it so that you can actually tuck in these flowers. But on that first the one on the left, I didn't actually tuck it through the slit. And with such a simple floral arrangement, I definitely wanted to correct that. So all I did was just do a partial die cut of another branch and of another stem, and glued that right over top the portion that was already glued down. And that way it actually looks as if it's coming out of the jar as opposed to sitting behind the jar. And for the originally, these are holly berries that are part of that holiday mason jar set, but instead of die cutting them out of red as holly berries, I die cut out of white to kind of give the look that maybe those that's a cotton plant, and that those are cotton balls. So I thought that might be a fun way to just kind of give a little bit of a twist on what would normally be maybe a more wintry, a more seasonal holiday set, but then, use elements from that and make a more springtime. And in this case, these two cards will be Mother's Day cards. And last minute, I also decided that I wanted to add a little bit of twine around the jar. The Holiday Mason jar, you can still see it on my screen there. It does have a die cut for die cutting a bow, but I wanted to use some real twine just to have a little bit of texture on this arrangement here. And had I thought about that in advance, it would have been a lot easier to actually wrap the twine around the jar die cut before gluing it down onto the card. But I was just so eager to start arranging my flowers that I really wanted to get that jar glued down so that I could start just playing and adding and tucking in different flowers. And I prepared a lot of flowers, but like I said, just in the end thought less is more, and so I kept it really, really simple. So these two cards are going to be pretty understated, especially compared to my last video where I also made a Mother's Day card, and that one was just way more colorful, had a lot more flowers, but I like them both. I think they the nice thing about this one is that Starburst pattern has kind of its space. There's enough negative space so that you can really appreciate that pattern. I'm bringing in 2 additional sentiment dies. So I've got the Thanks with Shadow, and I'm using both the shadow and the word die. And then I'm using the Love You Mom phrase, and that's the die set that will be given away from this video. So don't forget, just all you have to do to be in for a chance to win this die set is to leave a comment on this video, keeping in mind that the giveaway is only for US addresses. But I still encourage everyone who'd like to leave a comment, please do. It's just, if you are international, if you could just note that you are, that way when CottageCutz picks a winner, they'll know. And I did use some 3D glue gel both on the word mom and the flowers, just to give them a little bit of lift and a little bit of extra dimension. And I kind of like the mix and match of the fonts. I really love that mom font. It just feels very casual, very handwritten. And I've just added a couple more elements to this card that are a little bit more of a splash of color. So I've picked a Nuvo drop that's similar in color to the flowers, and then I die cut the little heart that's actually part of the Love You Mom phrase in the same color as the flower, just so that there's a couple more splashes of color. It helps to move your eyes around a little bit as well if you're tracking, if your eyes are tracking to that color. And so what's funny is that I used the phrase love you on my last card, and I didn't have room for the word mom, and here I am using the word mom, but I didn't use the word love you. But if you do win that die set, hopefully you'll get it in time to do your Mother's Day cards this year. And if not, the love you portion in the heart you could use year round, and of course Mother's Day does come around every year. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, happy crafting!